Welcome back to the Lightforge Podcast Festival of Legends card review. This is ADWCTA, and all of these scores are Merps approved, but Merps is not here with us. Um, if Merps were here with us, he would talk about how BS all the priests are, and how priests have the most ridiculous things, and how they can't be good in the meta, and if they are ever good in the meta's terrible. So let's look at what ridiculous cards they printed for Priest this time around, because you know they always have them. The number one card for Priest for this expansion, we think, is Harmonic Pop. 6 mana, Holy Spell. Deal 3 damage to all minions, summon a 6/6 Pop Star. That's right. This is pretty much the same thing as Abyssal. It's a 6 mana, 6/6 that deals 3 mana to everything. Except Abyssal was 7 mana. And was the totally ridiculous card. This one is 6 mana. And it's a totally ridiculous card. Now, it does swap each turn, so it only does this half the time. The other half the time, it deals 6 damage to all minions, and then summons a 3/3, which is ridiculous in its own right. So you're either basically hard removing everything almost, and then putting a 3/3 out there, or you're playing an Abyssal Enforcer for 1 mana less. This is really, 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 really insanely good. Now, the problem with this card and why it's not an S tier card, this is a plus tier card, by the way. So almost an S tier card, right? A plus, it's also what we gave Disco Mall. It's like so close to an S tier. And you may think it is an S tier card, right? But the reason it gets held back is because the swaps each turn thing really does hurt it. Like, when you want to Abyssal Enforcer the board, you really want to Abyssal Enforcer the board right now, not, like, wait a turn. When you want to, like, deal 6 damage to everything, you can't wait a turn. You're dead if you wait a turn. So there's like a 50% chance that this card is not doing what you wanted to do at the time that you needed to do the things that you needed to do. And that's what's holding it back. Otherwise, just that by the numbers, it's just a ridiculous card, right? Like, who makes a card that's 6 mana, 6/6, and then says, oh, by the way, we'll throw in an effect that should be like a 3 mana card in and of itself, or I guess 2 mana card these days. Wait, no, it would be a 3 mana card. Yeah, it was like Hellfire. Yep. Anyway, that's Harmonic Pop. It is a rare priest card. The other ridiculous cards for priest, we're not done yet. The other ridiculous cards for priest, there's 2 more A tier cards, but luckily they're both epic. So we can just go over them quickly here. First one is Heartthrob. It is a 3 mana, 2/5 undead, so on curve. And it has Overheal. Overheal is this new ability that's also in core now for Priest, and it means this happens whenever you heal this minion above its health, like above its max health. So Overheal, summon a random minion with cost equal to the amount overhealed. So if you use a hero power on it, what the turn you play it, you get an extra 2/2. That's pretty good in and of itself. But the priests also have a lot of like just kind of incidental heal everything like kind of cards and or abilities that's attached to minions that you'll just end up in your deck. And there's also some neutral cards that do that. And so whenever you pair it with a synergy, all of a sudden you get like an extra 3/3. So this card, because of its synergies, gets quite ridiculous. And even without the synergies, just the hero power makes it pretty good. Every turn, 2 mana, 2/2. After the Heartthrob, the other card is Fight Over Me. Here's another A tier spell. 4 mana Shadow Spell. Choose 2 enemy minions. They fight. Add copies of any that die to your hand. So ideally, this could hard remove 2 enemy minions for 4 mana while adding those cards to your hand. That is super duper 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 good. So why is this not an S tier card, right? That's always the question. Like, when you first look at this card, it just looks super ridiculous. This is not an S tier card for the very simple reason that there's more setup than you think. right? Like when this card hits, it hits big, but you do need at least two enemy minions. They have to be able to kill each other. If only one kills the other, it's not like the end of the world, but this card gets a lot worse, right? Like imagine if your opponent had a 5/5 and an 8/8. This card all of a sudden kills the 5/5, deals 5 damage to the 8/8, so it's still an 8/3, and then you get one card into your hand, which is that 5/5. Like, is that a good card? Yes. Yes, that is still a good card. But is that like a S tier card? No way, not even close. So you have to wait for the right conditions to appear. And generally, your opponent's not going to be putting out like two 8/8s. They might, but that's going to be a tough conditional. So it's a card that generally needs a little bit of help or is very situational to get its max value. You will find that you are not playing this card as actually two hard removals and then get both of those cards into your into your hand. That's not happening. Uh, but yeah, but it does have that potential. And even when it doesn't hit that potential, it's still very good, right? That's why it's an A tier card. All right. Now that we're out of that epics, priests have some lesser good cards, but are still decent. Let's look at Power Chord Synchronize. Power Chord Synchronize is a 2-mana spell, holy spell. Choose a minion, add a copy of it to your hand. Finale, give both +1/+2. So it's a +1/+2 buff for 2 mana that also adds a copy of that minion into your hand at a buff rate, assuming you hit the finale. That's good. Uh, it's a B tier card. You do have to use it with the finale, unless you're copying like the most ridiculous minion that you have to have, like one of your like win game kind of minions, where you're like, I don't care if I hit the finale or not, I just really need this minion. I can't afford to let it die potentially next turn, and then you use it even though the mana doesn't fully add up. But yeah, it's a good card. It's common. Okay. Next is Shadow Chord Distort. This is a rare card, 3 mana shadow spell. Give a minion -5/-5. It has 0 attack, destroy it. So this is what should be a 3 mana hard removal that is not hard, right? Like you don't really want to play it on anything that you're not killing. So it's the 3 mana conditional destroy minion. Assassinates are 4 mana. I don't know if they bump it down to 3 mana yet. Maybe they have. Uh, I forget. They reduce the cost of a whole lot of removals. But this is a conditional 3 mana removal, so it's not as good as like yeah. Someone in chat said Hex. Yeah, Hex is 3 mana now. But Hex is like they view Hex as not as good as Assassinate, right? Like remember back in the day, Hex used to be 3 mana and Assassinate was 5 mana because you're supposed to be giving your opponent a 0/1 taunt, and that's supposed to be a really big deal. Now they've kind of like come around to like, oh, the actual ability to silence at first is like super duper duper good, and Hex is usually like better than an Assassinate, not worse. Um, but but still. Either way, Shadow Core Distort, it's a removal that doesn't fully remove. I mean, it should fully remove. You should only use it to fully remove, but as a backup, you can actually just make the minions smaller, I guess. Okay. So those are where the priests are have good cards. Here's the thing with the priests now, though. Priests also got two pretty bad cards. They're not unplayable and they're not undraftable, but they're not good, and they are going to dilute the pool. Priest is going to be the one that dilutes the pool uh, the most. Probably alongside Paladin, because Paladin's diluting the pool with Boogie Down is like a almost undraftable card. These Priest cards are not totally undraftable, but they're bad. So you're gonna have a little bit of trouble with both of these classes in terms of their consistency of card quality. But before we get there, one more card. This is D plus, so this is like a little bit below a Yeti. It's a rare card, Dreamboat. Dreamboat is a 2 mana 1/2 Naga, battle cry, restore 3 health to all for other friendly minions. See, incidental heals. Gain +1/+1 for each one overhealed. So yeah, you have to. It synergizes with the overhealing, but it is not a 2-drop. Like that's the main problem with this card. If you try to use it as a 2-drop, you need a 1-drop that is that can be overhealed. Otherwise, it's a card for later, and you need a bunch of stuff on the board for it to really get its value, and that's hard for priests to do generally. But yeah, it's a D plus. The more dilutive cards, though, are the following 2 cards. These cards are common. They're going to be offered a lot. They have the offering bonus to it, and they just don't do a lot. The first one is a location, fan club, 1 mana, 2 charges, restore 3 health to all friendly characters. Like, it's fine. It doesn't even need to be a synergy card. Like, you look at it and it's obviously there to do really good work with overheal synergies. But even if you could just get stuff injured and add stats back, this is 1 mana for eventually, like, potentially a lot of stats. The problem is that you do need stuff on the board to be hitting other stuff and whatever for this to do anything at all. So pretty situational, and in Arena especially, you're not really in control of how the board ends up going. The other dilutive card is Idol's Adoration. This is the priest weapon. It is a 1 mana 0/2 weapon, and it says your hero power costs 0. After you use it, lose 1 durability. So it's essentially 1 mana for four mana eventually, up to 2 on this turn and 2 later, and you can only use it for hero power. So yeah, if you're ever about to use a hero power, you can always use the Idol's Adoration. So your first hero power costs 1 mana instead of 2, and then you get your next one for free. It's too slow of a trickle of mana. It's too conditional for it to like really do anything. Um, I'm sure there's the mana manipulation and like the ability to pay that 1 mana up front, and having 0 mana hero powers works really well for priests, especially with overheal. But all that stuff takes a lot of setup in Arena, and you're probably, and in the early turns too, you just won't get that consistency for this to actually do its job. Okay, so that is Priest. There is 2 legendary cards as usual. The minion is Heartbreaker Hedonist, which is a 4 mana 4/8 battle cry. Deal 4 damage to this minion. So it's a 4 mana 4/4 really, but with 4 healable health. And overheal, deal 5 damage to a random enemy. Not random enemy minion, but a random enemy. So you really, really, really want to overheal this. If you don't overheal this, it's quite bad. But if you do overheal this, it's quite good. So it ends up being a D+. It's just whether you can synergize enough with it. Without the synergy, 4 mana 4/4s would be a D. Alright, and the spell, the legendary spell is Love Everlasting. Love Everlasting is a 3 mana holy spell. Your first spell each turn costs 2 less. Lasts until you don't play a spell on your turn. I don't care if it lasts forever. Like, this is not an arena card. This is an F. So, yeah, that's Priest. You have Harmonic Pop. And that is going to cause so many problems. Luckily, it's a rare and not a common. That's about all you can say for it. But hey, Caverns was rare too. And look how many problems Caverns caused. So, I don't know. It's Priest. It was never going to be good. Like, it was never going to be well designed. Let me rephrase it. I don't think there is a way to have good priest design in the arena. At least they're focusing more on the healing side. I felt like that's always the only possible healthy thing that priest could do. Buff health and then heal. Everything else, it either doesn't work in arena at all, or it's too powerful when you give it to the priest. The dilution is going to help though. Like overall, between the fact that their most powerful card, Harmonic Pop, which is almost a S tier card, is a rare card, and that their common cards kind of suck. It is a D, and a B. I don't know that they're going to be very powerful overall, but if they do get powerful, it's going to be bad for everyone, and that's usually the case with the priest. All right, that's it for priest. Next up, rogue.